Oh, okay, cool. We'll just give them a couple of minutes to get into the room.
Yeah.
All right, 13 watching now.
And do you use chat, Jeffrey, or do you just, people just put their hand up for a question?
Yeah, so we have, oh, hang on, sorry. Okay, sorry, I've just have to. Yeah, so the way we're going to manage questions tonight is through Slido, because I realize that it's going to be probably just way too many people to put up their hands. So we'll just ask everyone to keep themselves on mute until such time that you're called for the questions. And yeah, so we have a couple of helpers today who will be feeding me the top questions.
So, that sounds really good.
All right. Okay, we'll just let everyone into the room. Okay, and we'll begin in probably about a minute.
All right.
Now, for the time being, if you like to turn on your cameras and let us see you, I mean, unfortunately, for most part of Australia right now, we're all in lockdown. And so in the absence of an actual live person event, which is what we would have loved to have, this is the next best thing. So if we can see you, it will make us feel a lot better. Good to see you, Bill. There's a couple of old Telstra friends. I can see you tonight. Simon Barlow, how are you?
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeffrey.
How are you, sir? And Michael Kelly, it's been a while.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. And all right, so what we'll do, without further ado, I'll jump straight into it. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sydney Professional Development Forum, or PDF for short. My name is Jeffrey Wang. I'm the founder of PDF, and I'll be the moderator for you this evening. For those of you who are here for the first time, PDF was established to help diverse young professionals find fulfillment in the modern Australian workplace. We're a group of volunteers who believe that everybody should have the access to the knowledge, mindset, and network to become the best version of themselves. So I would just like to start by asking everyone to update their names and turn on their cameras. As I said, this is the best that we can manage. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, this will make it feel as much like a real event as possible. So I'd like to, and here's the other thing. So a link will be shared in the chat box for anyone who wishes to connect with others on this call. So Navina will be sharing a link very quickly. And please note that this is a recorded session that is being broadcasted live to YouTube, and the recording will be subsequently distributed via social media in the future. So we ask all participants to be respectful to our guests and to each other. So tonight's session will include a 20-minute presentation from David, and followed by a live Q&A. As this is going to be a capacity event tonight, we will be using Slido to organize our questions for David. A link to Slido will be posted in the chat box in Zoom shortly. So please feel free to ask your questions and upvote those questions that you want David to answer. Thank you, E. And tonight we are very excited to be joined by David Thodey. David is one of the most well-known business leaders in Australia. He is focused on innovation, technology, and telecommunications with more than 40 years of experience. He's currently the chairman of CSIRO, Australia's National Scientific Research Agency. He's also the chairman of Tyro and Xero, and a non-executive board director of Ramsay Healthcare. Mr. Thodey is active in public policy and recently led an independent review of the Australian Public Service, commissioned by the Prime Minister himself, to ensure that our public servants have the capability to serve us into the future. In 2020, he was appointed by the New South Wales government to lead an independent review of financial relations with the federal government. David also served as the deputy chair of the federal government's National COVID-19 Coordination Commission Advisory Board. During the pandemic, he supported the government to successfully navigate Australia through these extraordinary, challenging times. Prior to that, he had a successful career as a CEO of Telstra and IBM Australia and New Zealand. David was awarded an honorary PhD in Science and Technology from Deakin University and an honorary PhD in Business from UTS. In 2017, David was made an officer of the Order of Australia for ethical business leadership. And as impressive as his resume is, it's his leadership style that really sets him apart from the rest. And you know, I still reminisce fondly with my colleagues about how they remembered you. And in fact, I'll share you a little story about how I met you. In fact, when I was a young graduate, you know, second day into my career at Telstra, this is all the way back in 2003. I was in the lift going on the way up into level 31 where I worked, and I remember you stepping into a lift. You're on the phone at the time, you know, in the headset with you came into a lift, and first thing you did was you apologized to me for not being able to talk to me because you're on the phone. And then before you get back to the person you're talking to. But such is how you treat someone who is 3 days into their career. And this is why people remember you fondly from those Telstra days. So let us please, I don't know how we're going to do this, but let us put it together, our hands together for David Thodey. Thank you very much. I'll welcome you to the stage.
Well, thanks, Jeffrey. That's really kind of you, you know, to say those things. It's great to be here, and you know, what a great opportunity just to come together. I really enjoy these sessions. I think I learn more than I actually talk about, because you know, it's good to get together. But gee, it's hard. I mean, I must admit, where I'm in Sydney, in the lower North Shore, it's this lockdown's tough. You know, I mean, for those in Melbourne as well, and SA, it just is. It feels like this round, it's, you know, I'm sort of craving for more human contact. So we'll try to have some fun anyway tonight. Okay. So when Jeffrey asked me to speak, I think he sent me a few topics around leadership, and you know, I think originally, Jeffrey, you asked me to talk around, you know, millennial leadership. Is millennial leadership different? And I've thought a lot about it, and I am going to talk around leadership tonight, because I think leadership is really important. And I don't mean, you know, sort of, you know, big titles, CEO leadership. I mean about leadership in your life. How do we all make the most out of our life? You know, what is the key ingredients of that? And you know, I've personally often thought, you know, what does make great leaders? Is it different between generations? You know, is Churchill, you know, was Churchill the great leader? I mean, is he different from, you know, a leader you'd find today? You know, is it different across different cultures? You know, was Gandhi, you know, was he a different type of leader to, I don't know, you know, take someone in the US, Roosevelt, you know, so, or is there some sort of essence within how people engage with each other, and how you can work together to create something bigger than what you could individually? Because I think that's really what leadership is about, is how as an individual can work with others to enable a team of people to really do something that they couldn't have done all individually. And that can be, you know, across any part of life. You know, it could be, you know, in business, obviously, it can be in the community, be a not-for-profit, could be, you know, in healthcare, could be if you're doing medicine or in law, or, you know, so it isn't bound by the sector you work in. And I think it's really important to try to understand what is it that, you know, really enables people to really achieve everything in their own lives. I mean, I think about my own life, and have I really achieved, you know, my full potential, and have I really, you know, turned up at the right places and made a difference, and all those things that, you know, I do in moments of self-reflection. I've also reflected, you know, over my career, and just like you, I've met some really clever people, you know, bright, articulate, incredibly gifted, but somehow they don't always, really realize their full potential. And I think, well, why is that? What is it that prevented them from really, really fulfilling, all the potential I see in them? And, I don't know what you like, but when I meet people, I see just incredible, capability and opportunity with them. And you always sort of learn. So I think that there's lots in this topic. And I'm going to talk mostly around personal leadership and fulfillment. I mean, like you, I've been through lots of leadership development classes, read the textbooks on, what makes great leaders. And, I think they're all good things. You can talk around leadership capabilities, and you need to have, ability to execute, strategic insight, business acumen. All those things are really important. But there's something more in who we are as people that I think that it is really important to try to explore a bit. So I'm going to share with you 7 areas that I think, I've found in the leaders that I've known has really impacted me, and I think have helped me in my journey. And I am going to ask the question, Jeffrey, which you asked me, is what would I tell my younger self? I should have done when I was younger, which is always a hard one because it's usually we're all pretty happy with our lives. So is that okay? Does that sound good? And then we can stop for a bit of Q&A, and think. So these 7 sort of areas of personal leadership. The first one is that when I meet really inspiring leaders, there's always something that they've got a vision. Be it Jeff Bezos, we're just talking about before, going up into space with and Branson's done the same thing, but they have this sort of really positive big outlook on life. They look at the world of possibilities, and they're not caught. I mean, they're happy to face into the challenges today, but they've always got this sort of bigger view. They're realistic, but they've sort of got this drive to achieve something. You've heard all the terms that purpose-driven is sort of the common language today, but it's something I think that exists outside of them. That it's something that they can impact the world, or it's something that they can really aspire to, and then they inspire others around them to really come on that journey. So I think this whole area of really vision, of purpose, of aspiration is really good, and they have such a drive and an energy around it. So that's the first thing. Now you could talk about that for a couple of hours about what that is, but it's something that's really from inside. I mean, I can remember when I became CEO of Telstra, it wasn't at a great time for those who worked at Telstra. It was nobody really liked working for Telstra that much at that time. Sol Trio had been there, and the government, didn't like us very much. But I really believe that, the people at Telstra were just outstanding, and they weren't recognized for everything they could do. And the other big thing I really felt strongly, and a lot of people, would actually went out of their way to tell me, is I really believe that we could deliver great customer service. Now, I'm sure some of you still got Telstra stories, but but we could live it. That we had, I know then we would have had about 12 million mobile customers, and I think we had about 6.5 million homes connected. And I thought we could look after every one of those customers really well. And people would say, "Oh no, you can never do that, David. That's impossible. Telstra's a big old monopolistic, bureaucratic government agency. We're always going to be mediocre." And I just didn't accept that. I said, "No, we can do this. We can prove them wrong." And that was, that was my little, vision for the company. Now, that was me, but every one of us has got a different sort of vision that we think, but it's something that against the odds. So that's the first area. The second area about great leadership, or people are seeing, is they've got this really deep self-awareness about who they are as people, and there's sort of they're aware of their strengths and their weaknesses. I'll come back to this on my last point as well, but they understand who they are and the impact they have on others, because that's really important in being aware, knowing what you're good at doing and what you're not so good at doing. Like, I actually am not very good at chairing meetings. I like engaging in meetings. I really like being, sharing ideas, throwing good thoughts out. Chairing meetings, I find sometimes really a bit constraining, because I've got to think about where everybody is and who's participating, who's not. So I always try to get someone else to chair a meeting if I can. But that's just me. I'm a person who, I need to get the facts out on the table to make a decision. I don't like making rash decisions. I like to be considered. Whereas people sometimes say, no, I really want a quick decision. But that's who I am. I know that I'm a morning person. I make far better decisions early in the morning. But if you get me at 7 o'clock at night, hopefully not tonight, I sort of wilt pretty quickly. Now, so it's just who I am. And so knowing who you are is really important. And by the way, it's tough to do that. It's actually tough to reflect on what motivates you, what drives you, and you need to put time aside in your life to think about how, what makes you you. And, we're all different, and that's good. That's the way life should be. And the other really important thing is that you learn in life is that the way you see yourself and the way others see you is quite different. So Jeffrey, has told a lovely story about me, thank you very much. And that's great. But sometimes when you turn up into a meeting, you can be in a completely different point, and you can really have a unintentional negative impact. And so you've got to really, be willing to listen to feedback about, how people perceive you, and actually show a degree of vulnerability in that. Now, you would have seen that Google study done on what makes great teams and team leaders, and it was from those teams that had a degree of vulnerability. They talked out of their, who they were as people. And I do think the self-awareness is really important. And I think it's probably one of the biggest derailers of leaders, because they become either so caught up in their own ego or their positional power, rather than in who they are and awareness of what they do. So that's, would be my second one is, self-awareness is really important. The third one will come, you'll all be probably more aware of, and that's sort of this humility and a learning spirit. It's amazing what you learn from people. I always remember some of you probably know him, but Paul Ramsey, who started Ramsey Healthcare. And for those who don't know the story, Paul had sort of, an average career. And then he decided to go into mental health, and he actually bought a mental health care sort of home in Lower North Shore. And that's from there he built a global empire of hospitals and did incredibly well. But Paul, whenever Paul would go into a hospital, he would immediately go down to the kitchen and talk to all the people in the kitchen. If you ever went to a cocktail party with Paul, he'd be the guy who'd be standing unassumingly in the corner and just talking to anyone who came by. And yet there he was, a multi-billionaire but he had the most humble spirit, but he always asked the most incredible questions, and he would, he'd have people talking about, like he'd have the people in the kitchen of the hospital talking about what was wrong in the hospital, why the cleaners weren't cleaning, that particular ward. So, but he had this humility and openness and this learning spirit about him. And he had this really positive impact on people around him. And I don't know what you're like, but when I'm around those sort of people, I just sort of feel great. It sort of makes me feel like I can take on the world. And I think that's, something really special. So that, it's not a false humility. It isn't, oh, well, I'm not very good at that. It's just, a willingness to listen and to be, to learn from others around you. It is just such a great gift. And each of us can do that. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it, with your partner or, your best friends. Sometimes we're too quick to always want to say something. So really important for all of us. And they have also sort of a natural curiosity, wanting to understand the why. That's what children do, isn't it? Why is it like this? And for so much we assume, and sometimes the simplest questions in a big meeting, that can really get to the essence of what we're trying to do. So that's the third one: humility and a learning spirit. The fourth one is more a value, but I think it's really important, and it's this whole question of integrity and trustworthiness. If you're going to be a leader, look, you don't have to get everything right, but you need to be true to what you're saying, and not, twist the truth to your own end. And that's what gets me so, concerned in, fake news, people who use facts selectively, who are not willing to take the time to really understand issues. And having integrity where you're true to what you say, even, and if you're wrong, you admit that you're wrong. And I just don't understand why people, we don't expect people to be perfect, but we expect people to be true to what they know and how they turn up. And I think that this whole question of trustworthiness is really important. And what I worry in our political environment, that's what, has been lost. And by the way, in corporate Australia, when people are so driven by their own greed or their own self-importance and not looking to the greater good, I think that is a real issue, and it comes back to this lack of integrity and trustworthiness. So that's the fourth area. The other thing that, when you look at great leaders, often they've been through really hard times and failed repeatedly. Now, we've all heard the stories around, failure and, being tolerant of failure, but there is something about what you really need to get through failure, and this is resilience. And it comes back to that first one around vision and purpose. If you really know what you want to do, and you've got that sense of purpose, then you'll stay the course in the tough times. I mean, look, I'll use Telstra as another example. I could use lots of different things, but the first year of when I was CEO of Telstra, I had 2 profit warnings. I think there were more cartoons about me on the back page in particularly AFR or the Australian, and if I didn't really believe what I was doing, or I didn't have such a confidence and resilience, I could have fallen over quite easily. So you really need to have this sense of commitment and be resolute and strong in what you want to get done, and it's hard. You've got to be willing to walk through the problem to get to the other side, and we all have challenges in our life. That's what life's all about. But it's the people who work through them And in the moment, it feels really tough. You don't know how you're going to get out. But that's what great leaders. And by the way, if you look at any leader from Napoleon through to Joan of Arc, through to Mahatma Gandhi, any of these people have been through real points of destitute, yes, and then come out the other side. So that's the fifth area, and then just two more to go, and then we'll a little bit further to go. And then the last one is a thing that we don't talk a lot about is actually discipline in your life. It's amazing. I wish that you could be successful just turning up and you're brilliant and you're witty and humorous and clever. But the truth is, every one of us has to have discipline in their life because there's so many demands on your time. And the more responsibility you get in life, the more discipline you need to do. And, I think around people who are managing a family, working, trying to look after your parents. There's an enormous amount of pressure, and you have to have real discipline in your life to get through that. And yet so many people don't take the time to put that discipline in, and they end up being too loose, and then they end up being overwhelmed. So you need to be, have an incredible sense of rigor and discipline, both in your professional life, in your private life, and use it to, really, achieve what you want to achieve. So discipline's really important. And then look, the last one, and I think this is really important. So as you know, I'm chair of Xero. I don't know if any of you know Xero, but cloud-based accounting. I love cloud, and it's for small and medium business, and it's we have this thing as beautiful software. It's just really cool. But they have their values are really quite unique, and the company's got a great sense about it. But they have two values that are really important. One's called #human, and the other one's called #challenge. And what they talk about is bringing your humanity to work, or bringing your humanity into any situation. And this sort of relates to our first area about purpose and having a vision, but doing it as a human being and being willing and relaxed in that. Bringing your whole self to work. Don't try to be something you're not. And so you bring that humanity, but also you've got to have challenge, because we don't want to be mediocre. We were talking before, we all aspire to make a difference, to be successful at what we do, have a sense of real satisfaction about what we do. That's great, but you've got to do it within humanity. So I think this, generosity of spirit, the sense of authenticity, I think that's where authentic leadership come from. You can be a very powerful, authentic leader and really make a difference. And I think the great leaders in the world have been, like that. So, they're the 7 things that I think really make a difference in leadership and in our lives. So I'll just finish on the 3 things that Jeffrey asked me to talk about was, what would I tell my younger self that I should have done? And the truth is, there isn't that much, but there are 3 things I thought about. Number 1, I think I would say, trust your instinct more, trust yourself, because I think that often, while you should listen to many people to get advice, you instinctively know what's right and trust yourself. Don't think because age is not a determinant of wisdom. You don't have to have enormous experience to, be right. Now, we should respect our elders and mature people, of course, like me. But trust your gut and go with it. Because you want to make the most of life. So that'd be the first thing. And for myself, at times I didn't trust my judgment. I thought that I knew that I wanted to do something, but I held back too long. In the end, I got there, but I could have been quicker. The second thing, which may be a little bit counterintuitive, you want to make a difference as quickly as you can, but just remember, I plan to be working until I'm 90. Okay, I don't believe in retirement, and I think that take the long-term view. Don't feel like you've got to get everything done in the next 3 years. By the way, do as much as you can, but take the long-term view. It is really interesting. I think in business, at least, you tend to work in sort of 5-year cycles, and that's sort of quite a good period sort of to look at getting things done and then moving on. And look, with longevity, what's the average lifespan in Australia? It's sort of early 80s or maybe mid 80s now. We're one of the longest lifespan longevities in the world. I think we're number 2. So we want to keep people active and engaged. And I think it's such a travesty that people retire. By the way, I respect people who retire, but retirement is not opting out and going, and no longer being relevant. We need those people active in the community, helping, and our society needs to completely change. By the way, I think many, other cultures, I don't think the West is very good at, really respecting, age and helping people participate. And then the last one is, I think that, by the way, on that second one, I think at times I rushed things too much. I thought I had to get, had to be second line manager by the age of 32. I don't know what it was, but sometimes I sort of thought too much. And look, the last one I would tell myself is, enjoy the journey, enjoy the journey. It isn't about arriving, but enjoy the journey and the people who come on the journey with you. Because sometimes in our desire to achieve, we miss out on the pleasure of working with people and enjoying it. Life is short, and we need to celebrate each other. We need to recognize each other and enjoy it. Still be brilliant. Still, achieve incredible things. I'll just finish on this one. I was speaking at PwC this week, and we were talking about seeing around corners and strategy and all that stuff. I do think that there's something about great leadership. Great leaders are not a victim of circumstance, but they create the future. So often, people feel victims of their situation. And look, we all have those moments where things happen around us. But great leaders create the future, and you look in business, look at Sony versus Apple. Sony should have invented the iPhone, not Apple. Sony had all the technology. But Steve Jobs dreamt. He dreamt he could create a whole new future, and look what he did. He created, $1 trillion. Well, what's the market cap of Apple now? It's $1 trillion something. It's amazing. So look, that's a little bit of my reflection. I've taken too long. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, but happy to take any questions as we go forward.
Right, thank you so much for that. Look, I think if I may, I'll just indulge you in the first one. So you mentioned 7 characteristics of a great leader. Which one was the hardest one for you to learn, and why?
Look, for me, I think it probably was being comfortable with myself, to be honest, Jeff. There's a lot of sort of expectation put on all of us, parents, business, etc. And coming to a landing about who I was and what I stood for, and that I didn't need to be defined by anything external, I think I found quite hard. The other things, getting up early in the morning. I'm an early morning guy. I never really found that hard. They weren't. Some people find that hard, but for me, it was that journey of really self-awareness, and there's that whole thing of imposter syndrome. You suddenly find yourself in a senior position, think, wow, how did I arrive here? Am I really capable of doing this? Self-doubt, all those things that are very human feelings, and being able to live with them and recognize them and still be driven by making a difference was really, I think, something that I had to work through. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. The next question, we've got Washington Shoji. Can you ask your question?
Hi, David. Thank you for being here tonight with us. My question is, so you have worked for like a big corporation, also some more younger organizations and governments. So I think due to lifelong experience, you have seen it all. So my question is, it's more about the Australia's like current and future workforce. So in your view, what do you think will be the future Australian workforce? And do you have any personal advice for aspiring leaders on being on that workforce and be the future leader?
Right. Really good question, Washington. Firstly, it just amazes me, just the incredible variety of different roles that we can all work in. Working in the public service is a really admirable thing. Working with, public policy is complex and difficult. Being in the academic community is really important. Working in industry is really important. And we are a very lucky country because we have such strong sectors that have really allowed us underpin the wealth generation in this country, from resources sector and agriculture. But if I was to look at where I think Australia is weak, because we've had such strength in agriculture and in resources sector, what we haven't done is really built our knowledge-based economy, information-based economy as strong as we need to. And as we know, with digital enablement and digitization of nearly every industry around the world, and the opportunity that creates in going global very quickly, I think there's going to be enormous opportunity in this sort of digital information enablement. Now, it's not the technology sectors we've known before, but it's about the digital enablement of, from healthcare to aged care to how we learn. It's enabling every industry in a different way. And with that, if you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, just enormous opportunity. And that's why venture capital, startups is such an important part of our economy. So I think that's where the future of work will be. Obviously, there's going to be a very strong services industry as well. And I think for too long, we've not recognized the importance of healthcare, aged care, etc. So that's going to be a big opportunity too. And you're going to need, people who are delivering healthcare, but also administration. But I would encourage all of you, I actually had quite a narrow career. I came up, joined IBM. I did a degree in anthropology and English and a little bit of religious studies after doing a science major. And then I went into IBM. I was a systems engineer in IBM for 21 years, then telco. And I didn't really expose myself to public policy and startups and innovative companies till quite late. And I think that there's enormous value creation. I think there'll be more and more small businesses, self-employed people going forward. I think that the era of working for large multinationals it'll always be there, but I think there's just such opportunity. The barriers to entry into business or making a difference are actually a lot lower than they were before. And so I think that that's where I think I would, if I talk to my children, who, are, in getting older, they're in their 30s now. That's what I talk about. Now, see, I would never have thought when I started work to start my own company, but now I think I'd encourage people to do that. Yeah. So is that helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, next up, we've got Tao Lee. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Hi, David. Thanks for being here with us on a Thursday evening and for sharing your wisdom and insights. The question I had was, so recently you wrote a really interesting article back in 2015 on why it's so slow on the workplace equality, where you noted some radical change needs to happen where we haven't got it right. So as a result of that, and as a result of, I guess, your active engagement, not only being a member of the Male of Champions of Changes, we've seen some transformation in the workplace that has really shifted the system in inequality.
Yeah. Well, this is a ongoing, challenge. I mean, just a little bit of history. I mean, I can, when I worked for IBM was very strong on gender diversity. And I can remember in, 1989, because the US companies, spent a lot of time on gender diversity. And I can remember they used to have a women's leaders program. I can remember going into a room, this is in Sydney, and there must have been 1,000 women in the room, and I was the only man. Now that may sound, not very, different for many of the women on this call, but for me, I was suddenly confronted with that I was different, and I was a man, and there was, in those days, it was a very friendly environment. There were quite a lot of people there saying, "Who is this man? Get out of here!" And so it really struck me, that I realized again that the way I saw the world, it was not right, and I had to learn from many women that there. You said, "Look, well, you don't realize the incredible biases that I face every day, how my life has been impacted." And I suddenly became aware of, a different reality that they saw. So it's always been really important to me to have diversity, so both from a positive, but creating an inclusive environment, because one of the other things is that so often we create cultures which doesn't allow people to really be themselves. And that's why, at least, in the company I've been involved in, I really wanted to create, be a part of, actually, because I didn't necessarily create an environment that was really inclusive and, allowed people to really turn up and make a difference and be, really contribute. Now, there was this thing called the Male Champions Change. By the way, it's changed its name. It's now just thankfully called the Champions of Change, because it was a very, male thing. And the reason that started was that, unfortunately, or, the reality was that the senior CEOs in Australia were all men. There were no women. And how we turned up was really important. And, I can still remember the first meetings, because this is very normal type A behavior from CEOs. We've got a program, we're putting in childcare in our, in downstairs, and that's going to solve gender equity in this company. Or, we've got to put unisex toilets in, and that's going to solve, our problems of gender diversity. And of course, it was anything but the truth, and because it's the culture you create in the company that is most important. And I still, to this day, when I'm at, my family, there's a very diverse group. Why is my family different to the work where I go? And why is it this, male-dominated, these stereotypes of roles still so strong? And look, I understand there's different roles and there's different characteristics. But I worry that sometimes we stereotype, female leadership versus male leadership, or, and I think it's really wrong. I think there's great leaders and they happen to be men or women. It doesn't really matter. But that particular initiative, the Champions of Change, Male Change, allowed us to talk about the challenges, because, it hasn't changed leadership. We're still only 33% of leaders in Australia are female. Why is that? That's crazy. We're lesser people for it. And I think, a lot of women opt out because they say, well, I don't want to be a part of this crazy corporate world and I got better things to do. And they go and start their own business and are incredibly successful. So I don't know if that answers your question, but, that's why it was important. And I think it's really important. But, all of us can make a difference in that, and we should. I think society, we need to create a society in Australia where it is inclusive, where we celebrate diversity, and I was brought up for a little bit in New Zealand, and, Maori culture is a critical part of New Zealand life, and it's celebrated and embraced, and it's a richer culture over there. And we need to get the same for all the cultures that we have in Australia. So that'd be my view.
Thank you for that. That's actually a great segue for Ella's question coming up next.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Hi, David. Thank you for so much wisdom tonight. I know you're a big fan of gender diversity based on what you've been talking about and what you've discussed in your other interviews as well. And I think certainly cultural diversity is a big topic, right? Because a lot of it is, the diverse population not being super comfortable in the corporate world. I want to take this question from a different angle, though. As a board member, if you were trying to encourage management to consider further cultural diversity in their workforce, what kind of questions would you ask them?
Yeah. Really good question, Ella. And I really agree with you. In my career, I lived for 5 years in Japan, by the way. I don't know if you, and, by the way, and this is a little side story. I experienced, racial bias. Walking around Japan, this is back in the 90s. And, I was, the gaijin, the white guy, and it's quite confronting, really. It's to be, have your identity defined by how you look, and I had no idea who I was. So I think this is really important. Look, I think that, I come at it, from a view of appreciating the diversity and creating an environment where are lots of different ideas. So I ask questions, well, have you thought about, who have you spoken to? So I try to come at, bringing diversity into the boardroom, into the management team, by talking about the customers we serve, about the culture we create, and helping people think through that, what opportunities they're missing by not having a, great gender diversity. By the way, I've just been through a process at the Xero board, because part of ESG now is ethnic diversity on boards. In the US, you have to, now you're being asked to have ethnic diversity on boards. And we went through this process of defining what our ethnicity was. Now, this was really interesting. So am I a Australian white male? Am I a European white male? Caucasian white male? Do I like being called that? And, just this whole sort of question around, what is my ethnicity, and does it really, it doesn't matter. Well, it does make a difference. But, and then, how do you actually create an environment where people are feeling, embraced and free to participate? So you've got to keep working at the culture, Ella. I don't know any other way to do it, because you feel when you belong, and you're appreciated. And at the end of the day, that's what all of us want, isn't it? We want to be able to come in, feel valued for who we are, and able to contribute, and without all this, baggage that often gets thrown around. So that's the way I approach it, because I'm not sure I can go and say, hey, I want to, go and hire, 20 Vietnamese and 10 Cambodians and, 28 Filipinos. That doesn't work that way. You just want to create some. So I do think I'm back to culture enormously, and too often we've created, unintentionally, all this unconscious bias and creating psychological safety. They're really important things. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Now, changing gears, can I ask you to ask his question around the COVID response? Unfortunately, we can't get away from that.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, David, for your time. I really appreciate your joining us tonight. Catherine Livingstone, obviously, you know very well.
Yeah.
Says Australia should aim to set a clear time frame to open its international borders.
Yeah.
Very keen to hear your view on this.
Yeah. Look, I heard her say that the other day. Yeah, look, I must admit, I do agree with her. However, I'd probably frame it slightly differently. I think we need to be bold and say we are going to vaccinate, 85% of the population by the 1st of November. Let's get on with it, Now, when I say that, I know there's concern around which vaccine. There are people who are really concerned around vaccination in terms of health, etc. But the truth is that just like we're, vaccinated for, smallpox, for rubella, it is just something we need to stare into. So the real test is getting to a level of vaccination that allows us to open up the country and then to live with this virus. So. And that's been, unfortunately, I have been quite involved in the AstraZeneca thing, because I don't know if you know, CSIRO, they tested the AstraZeneca virus, it would have been January, February 2020, and did a lot of the early work for on a global basis, because we run an animal health lab down in Geelong, and so we've sort of traced that one through. But look, at the end of the day, vaccination is the answer. Then you can open up. And so, but to open up too early without the right level of vaccination, as we're seeing here in Sydney, is very dangerous, because you get the, people who are not vaccinated, they're the most vulnerable in society. And you do have a public health responsibility. From an economic point of view, I want us to open up, but the real truth is that we've got to get vaccinated. And there were some bad decisions made. We should have, gone for Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca. Should have gone for 3, and then we could have chosen it, because, by the way, none of them are better than the others. They all have risks. Did you know that? Now, I am not a medical. I'm not a epidemiologist. I'm not a biochemist, but the CSIRO team told me the other day that currently on the market, there are something like 1,600 medications that have a higher mortality rate available today on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. 1,600, they have a higher mortality rate than AstraZeneca, So, when you see, so this thing's just been very badly communicated. Yes, there's dangers of blood clotting, and yes, you need to be considered and talk to your GP, etc. But any of the medications we take, because we're all different, there is a risk. So it hasn't been well communicated. Some of you probably know this better than I do. So I'm not. Yes, I agree with Catherine, but I think the real test is getting vaccination done.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Yeah.
Thank you. So just in the interest of time, I can see there's still a ton of questions, but what I'd like to do is ask the last questioner to come up. Annie, can you ask your question of David? Thank you.
Hi, David. So my question is, how do you maintain humility despite achieving so much career success?
Hi, Annie. Well, I look at everything, all the mistakes I've made, how many screw-ups I've done. You know, it's quite. My wife tells me how, you know, how I need to improve in lots of different areas. You know, I've got a lot of good people around to keep my feet very base, you know, on the ground. Okay, I think that because I'm not sure that I'm not sure I am humble. Number one. Number two is I keep looking at the bigger picture and the world around me and how much more is possible. That keeps me very, you know, grounded, because that I keep seeing the world of possibility around me, and I think, wow. And then I look at what people achieve, and you know, I don't know. I have been on some of these panels that, you know, look at scholarships, you know, the Westpac scholarship, and I do interviews, and I see these incredible people come through, and like you people who have done, you know, a couple of degrees, you know, been on started a not-for-profit, you know, got a business going, and I think, wow, you know, by the time I was 21, I'd done an undergrad degree and was doing some study at IBM, and yeah, I just look at these wonderful people. So that's how I keep. Humble, Annie. You know, I see great people around me, and I think, wow, you know, how can I help them be successful and, you know, be a part of it? But hey, I'm really pleased about what I've done as well. So don't think I don't have some sense of accomplishment, you know, in that. Hey, Jeffrey, I think we should throw back to you, but you know, I hope this has been. I've enjoyed myself, but I hope everyone else has.
Thank you so much for that, Dave. And really, thank you for so generously sharing your time and wisdom. You know, it does give us such a true insight into how you're able to create the legacy that you have. So really appreciate you for doing that. Now, unfortunately, we can't answer all the questions, but if it's possible, we might, if it's okay, if we can follow up with yourself and see if we can get a couple more. And certainly, we'd love to stay connected with you, and in the way that you can share with us your wisdom and the leadership that you have provided. So really appreciate that. And
thank you, Jeffrey. Oh, it's been my pleasure, and it's been great to see you. And well done. And I wish you all the very, very best. And happy to, circle back if there's anything specific. But really great. Have a great night, and take care of yourselves too.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you everyone for attending the event. Please provide feedback that you can. So there's a feedback form that's circling in the chat box. Next event we have is coming up on August the 5th, 7 p.m. With Rebecca Jarvis, who's a recruitment expert in IT. She'll be speaking on navigating your way in the job market. So we'd like you to like our page on Facebook and LinkedIn, subscribe to our mailing list, and visit our website on www.professionaldevelopmentforum.org. Thank you all so very much, and have a great evening. Anyone that was free to stick around, we'll have a casual networking session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeffrey. Excellent night.
Oh, cheers.
Well done.
Gary, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks, David. It was excellent. The only thing I would have liked, David,